Again, we are very excited to have you all, and thank you so much for spending your time with us as we talk about the wonderful film. But before we begin, just want to make sure everybody knows who we are in the company of with and have the pleasure of speaking with. So just ask, can you each introduce yourself and your pronouns as well?
Who wants to start? I guess since I've started talking, I'll start. I'm Zach. I'm now in New York City. Actually, I live in New York City now for a while. Back in the U.S. from the UK, etc. And what else do you need to know? Oh, I was involved with Polly and Bruna making the Mark of Lilith. It was our degree film, and I'll leave it at that for now.
Awesome.
And your pronouns as well. So,
Oh, he, him.
Cool.
I've transitioned since made the film.
Oh, okay, cool.
Hi, I'm Bruna Fionda, and I'm she.
Hi, I'm Polly, and I'm a she, and I'm based in Oxford, the UK.
I'll open this up to everyone. Can you just speak about the film's origin? I know you said that this was a film for your degree, but where did the idea begin and how did it evolve throughout this entire process?
I I was I was the initiator maybe because I'm a fan of vampire movies ish, especially since The Hunger. And the idea was to have a feminist kind of critique of vampire movies with some fun, influenced by certain kinds of experimental or intellectual filmmaking.
Well, we've been working together on previous college projects and we like working together. And we decided rather than make our own individual graduation films, we wanted to do a collaboration. So we decided to go to Italy on holiday and brainstorm ideas. And that's when we came up with vampires. We knew that we wanted to subvert a genre. We thought about westerns and other genres, but we latched on to the horror vampire genre as it seemed niche for using those monsters as a vehicle for our message.
We had watched The Hunger, all of us together, and we were blown away by it. So I think that was a huge influence as well on our ideas. We're kind of into Catherine Deneuve and David Bowie.
Come on, boy.
Yeah.
The makeup, very, all of those. But that's very exciting. So, a lot of times we like to talk about the origin because we do have a lot of folks as well that are filmmakers getting into it. So, I think that's really important. But I'm interested as far as filming this, like each phase that you all went through, about how long did it take for you all to film it? And as well, too, when it comes to looking at the cast, right, of everything. Can you all talk a little bit about that?
I think the timeline overall was over a year, although we obviously were working on it constantly. But from the inception of the idea to finishing the film, it was over a year. We spent most of our time researching. In fact, we perhaps spent too much time researching, but that was great because we knew our subject well and felt confident on that. And we left our time really tight for the production and the post-production, but we managed it. I think overall the production was probably over a series of 3 weeks with the extra odd day here and there for the odd locations. And the post-production was about 5 weeks.
I think the autumn term, the fall term, was pretty much spent developing the screenplay and actually finding the locations, finding the crew, finding the actors. We were using, I mean, it was before internet, so we were using books, the Spotlight book. And I think Zach found Pamela, who plays Xena. Do you
Yeah.
want to talk about that?
Black Women's Theater organization. I think it's through them that I found her. And she happened to be American. So I guess at the time she kind of stood in for me on some. But I think primarily she was a dancer. I think we figured out she might have actually been a dancer primarily. And you can see that in her movement.
It was her first acting role.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she was learning a lot on the job, but she was brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a big gamble for us taking her on, not having the acting experience, but we decided to go with Pamela because she understood the ideas of what we wanted to portray, and we felt that we could work well with her. Whereas, Polly mentioned Spotlight, which was a database where you find actors. We found Susan, who played Lilia. We found her through the traditional route through Spotlight. And she recommended her friend Jeremy. We said we want a wolf-like character, looking character, and she said, "I know someone." So we had certain looks and ideas that we wanted for Lilia and Luke, but we were quite open about how Xena looked, really. It's more about how our working relationship would work, really.
And she's tall and beautiful. Pretty irresistible. So I think she's
Doesn't
perfect for
hurt.
it. Yeah.
Awesome. So the Xena character especially is represents, I think, I mean, a lot of identities that, as we know, are not really seen in horror. So, you know, back then and even now, if we're being honest. So, you've started talking a little bit about Pamela, but was Xena actually was she actualize exactly how she appears in the film from the beginning, or did this sort of like happen over time? Like, did we say we want a Black lesbian woman, or was that sort of, something that you were like, now we have an extra layer here?
No, I think it was we want a Black lesbian woman. I think,
That was our intention.
yeah, that was because at the time, I suppose it was kind of I was a lesbian at the time, and I think it was important to celebrate that identity.
Mm.
Uh, so,
Yeah, we love intention.
And she was from that community as well.
Oh, awesome, awesome. So at any point, did you imagine that sort of that kind of representation would still be resonating with folks all of these years later, particularly in the genre, but like, Black folks and women and LGBTQ folks all can kind of sort of take a piece of this in a way. So did you all think that did you imagine that this kind of representation was going to resonate? I mean, what, 40 years later?
I don't think we knew that it would take off in the way it did at the time.
yeah,
As a student film, I think we thought we'd have our graduation screening and that would be it. But it just flew off the shelf and went into distribution and did really well at screenings nationally and internationally. It won an arts award from the Arts Council as best student film. The British Council took it and toured that, and so it really propelled. And so that surprised us. Uh, but the distribution companies that we were with fell into a funding lull in the 90s. And so the distribution of it fell. But we think that maybe that was also partly to do with post-feminism was coming out and
Yeah.
backlash on that.
yeah.
I think it was also distributed in America in the 80s with was it Pictures of Women? Cinema.
Make movies.
Women make movies, yeah.
Women Make Movies, yeah. So it did amazingly well for a student film. We weren't
Yeah.
expecting that.
Awesome.
And then it was getting written about
Mm.
by academics as well. So we were kind of getting referenced in books and stuff, which was
Help.
awesome. But we thought in the 90s it had died a death.
And here we are.
Yes, thank you for screening it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, as we sort of talked about briefly already, the film critiques horror, tropes, the lesbian vampire, the monstrous feminine. Uh, so what was the driving force when you all gathered, together in Italy? Like, what was the driving force around wanting to explore this particular critique versus something else?
I think we thought it was a great vehicle for looking at sexuality, race, and gender issues, being the other. We latched on to the Barbara Creed's article, Horror and the Monstrous Feminine book, and we almost verbatim quoted it in the film, one verse from there, because we were so impressed that it succinctly explained what we were on about.
And then one of the things that's actually really striking to me watching it was how the film really plays with like the watching and being watched, like the direct sort of like looks into the camera, like
Mm.
sort of a breaking of the fourth wall. Um, and so Xena is watching these horror films and then also a horror film, and then Lilia just steps into this world of Xena's. So what did you want audiences, by using that sort of as a dynamic, what did you want audiences to kind of get from that?
Well, we were playing around with the gaze, the male gaze and the female gaze. And we were playing around with the trope that the vampire casts no reflection.
Mm.
So at the point when Lily can actually see herself in the dressing table mirror, that's when she starts to see her role in the historical role as the victim. And that's when she begins to actually understand who she is and what her role is, and that Xena is out there in the audience watching and wants more from her role, or from her place as the female vampire. And it's exploring expectation of audience, and it's trying to privilege the female gaze. That's what we were trying to do to some extent.
Yeah, that's great. I have like a nerdy bonus question that I wanted to ask, which is around the sort of like cutaways to like predator, like animal predator footage. Um, it kind of reminded me of not content wise, but it reminded me of a film I love called Ganja and Hess that used kind of cutaways to sort of more African ritual scenes. So not really sort of the same type of content, but the same use, I think. And I was just curious, like, was that consciously happening, or was that something that you just sort of, or was that a choice you made, or was that, something that just emerged kind of instinctively as a tool to tell the story?
It was very conscious, very conscious of especially the female as viewed as object, and this dialogue between the audience, the member of the audience who was critiquing and calling on the female character to respond to making some changes in the way that representation happens. And yes, I think it's primarily about their dialogue and how this world of genre can be modified or updated or deconstructed even. Um, that's one part of it.
Well, I think in asking about the use of cutaways and the use of Lilia we were trying to represent her as a caged beast, caged animal that needed to get away from her relationship. So she is pacing, and we'd shot, me and Bruna had gone to London Zoo and shot a tiger in a cage, and we were intercutting it with this pacing. And then it was, what you were saying, Bruna, was that she is a predator and a huntress, and we were using that sort of footage of an instinct, because when she attacks Xena, it's that instinct of being a predator, and the fact that she can't really help it.
I meant to ask earlier, do each of you, and of course my cat wants to join us now, so but do each of you sort of have like your own, what did you each sort of feel like you brought to the project in terms of like expertise, or like what did somebody have one sort of lane that really felt like this is how I'm contributing in this particular way more than the other, or did it feel kind of equally shared and collaborative?
I think it was pretty collaborative, but we each have our own kind of interests, and I have a kind of academic-y interest, and but also love genre movies and love filmmakers who deconstruct them. So I think those are kind of the key elements that were important to me to have that. I wanted it to be sexy too. I mean, I think the vampire's a very sexual being often, and but without voyeurism. And I think we achieved that.
I think we over censored ourselves on that score though, because we didn't want to create that gaze, and we were far too rigid. Like in the bed scene, it could have been more pacing, but we decided that we just didn't want people to get off on it. That was devoid of our message, really.
Yeah.
As soon as it got going as a film, we'd stop the pleasure.
Yes. When you think the film's going somewhere, the end.
But the pleasure was supposed to be intellectual too, I mean, they were beautiful. I mean, there was a lot of levels of pleasure. Dialogue stilted, but we also wanted that structure and rigidity of speaking to specific things. It's a student film. It was we're experimenting, and generally, I hope you guys enjoyed it. That it was enjoyable enough to, I think there's some beautiful shots in it, and it does the basic job. So
I mean, very
We were
enjoyable.
all learning. We were all learning a lot from the whole experience.
yeah.
And it was phenomenal, really, because we were multi-skilling, multitasking, and talking and talking and talking and talking, really. And so it was brilliant.
I think it's important for people to know, like, and reinforce the student film part, because I can't imagine having anybody look at anything I did in school 40 years later, because you are learning. This was sort of, and for it to have the life it does is really beautiful. But it's, within the context of knowing you were still students, which is really remarkable. So anyway, Michael, your turn.
I was enjoying. I was just making the comment that it is very enjoyable as far as the legacy and what it means as well today. But one of my favorite things is always films that have movie theaters and films in it. So it's always sort of kind of like watching films inside of the film.
Yeah.
But I wanted to ask, as far as like the marquee that was outside of the theater, and it caught my eye because I know Bambi was number one, and I forget what the other two films were. But I wanted to ask you all as well too, as far as being that it's spooky season, and what are your favorite maybe horror films that you all were leaning into? Because I feel like that was intentional to have those movies as she was exiting the theater as well. So I'm just curious. My nerd question.
The Hunger, I think. Is The Hunger out then? I lose track of.
And the old horror films, the Nosferatu, the Frankenstein, the old versions. I loved those and was terrified of them as a kid as well.
I'd studied Nosferatu, so I'm sure it had an influence.
Awesome. And as well, I mean, right now your film is existing inside of queer feminist film history as well too. And having, like you say, people leaning into that. But what was the most fun, or maybe you all learned something? I know you all say it's a student film, but hey, we have to start somewhere as well too. But what was the most fun or surprising part of making this?
I think one was when we shot the film within the film, the black and white cemetery Dracula part. We did it with full moon, and we were the only ones locked in the cemetery. And some of our crew just got so spooked out that they did a runner.
Yeah, they just
That was something. And I think also have been able to have the ritzy cinema all to ourselves and light it the way we did and have tracks and that was important for us because it's our local independent cinema as well. And of course there is a line in the film that says "Take me to the Ritzy," and when it was screened there, you know, there was amazing applause for that. So that was a feel good factor as well as fun having the cinema.
yeah. Spent a lot of time in that cinema, I think.
And we had interesting times in Soho. The meat market was shot like 3 or 4 in the morning, and we kind of wanted to go for a drink afterwards because they have for the market people, they have all night pubs. We wanted to drink after the shoot. They wouldn't serve us because they thought we were working women.
Right next to the meat rack, literally.
Yeah.
We eventually got a drink. We argued our way through, but it was all pretty awesome, and also everybody supporting us in South London. We had a huge amount of support. The makeup artist, everybody was just helping us. It was amazing.
The fun fairs as well. We shot the fun fair scenes in 3 different fun fair locations, and 2 of them we just had the fun fairs completely to ourselves. So that was pretty amazing again to have that.
In and of itself is kind of creepy to me. I don't know. I feel like there's something about being in such a place you're used to being so populated and full of sound and laughter, and then it's empty. I would be terrified.
Yeah. So it worked.
It worked. It worked.
Okay. Cool.
I'm curious as well as how did this film influence your creativity moving forward, maybe your professional lives, this reception as well through your journey as an artist?
I think part of the thing that we were involved in at the time, what was going on here was that we had workshops that was funded by Channel 4 and ACTT, the TV Film Union. And it was set up to provide a platform for minority voices, for people to train and make their own programs. And if they were good enough, they would get broadcasted. So that was really alive at the time that we were making this. And in fact, we're involved in one particular workshop where we ran video production classes to make money, which we ploughed into the film. But because of our involvement in the workshop sector, people got to know who we were. And for me and for all of us, actually, we then went on afterwards and worked in various workshops. For me, it was great. I worked on quite a lot of programs that I feel really proud of working on those, which unfortunately today I haven't really got the opportunity to make those sort of programs because there isn't the money anymore.
Mhm.
Yeah, I moved into the first job was in the workshop sector, and then I got into editing after that. But I'm back in the workshop sector now, teaching screenwriting. So, you know, yeah, it gave us it gave us good, a good sort of, well, it was mixed actually, because it got kind of, the 90s was like, it was seen as, you couldn't use it as a film because the 90s was such a sort of anti-feminist era, I suppose. But initially it was really, really helpful, and it's just been part of our lives now.
I tended towards the academic, so I think I was maybe doing some writing around film analysis, and it didn't stay in film. It didn't.
Well, nearly, I guess, these years later, our community, I'm sure other communities, especially with the film being made as accessible as it is now, um, folks are discovering the film for the first time, which is beautiful.
Enjoy. It's amazing.
How does that feel to know your work is being sort of witnessed for the first time? And then what do you hope that, an audience right now in 2025, what do you want them to take away from this film?
Hopefully that things have changed, but they haven't. But no, I think some of the films that have come out recently have really moved things fantastically forward. Filmmaking is all about moving things forward, and we were definitely in the 80s. That film.
And also, it's a sort of in the tradition of a particular, genre of experimental narrative. Yeah, like Laura Mulvey's, I guess. So it's could be kind of a history lesson about that kind of filmmaking, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pleased that it's reaching a new audience. I think that's great, but I just hope that they view it in mind of what filmmaking and the feminist movement was doing in the 80s, and they view it with that perspective. Otherwise, they may be disappointed with all, how this media has changed so much. It might not look so well polished to them, comparing to today's standards.
I hope they don't worry about that.
Enjoy it. Yes, just enjoy it.
Yeah, there are just moments I think that, I think when you're closest to the work, sometimes you it's an advantage and a disadvantage sometimes, like, because I was watching it and I was like, oh, this is stunning. I was like, there were just shots, like, I mean, inclusive of the one that's kind of behind Polly, especially that one. I was like, oh my God, the colors. Like, I just was like, they felt intentional and specific, but they didn't feel, I wasn't being beat over the head with the choices, if that makes sense. So yeah, I think it's beautiful.
For me, it was about changing community rather than the change of the character. It's about the community needs to change to be sympathetic to everybody's needs. Yeah. And I think that's what we were wanting. I mean, Lilia changes, but we want the community to change.
Perfect note to end on, friends. Thank you for your time. That was beautiful.
Thank you for inviting us.
Absolutely. I think folks will really enjoy hearing folks really love the like behind the scenes, the like fun facts, the sort of driving forces. And so I hope that this is going to be really helpful for a lot of folks who either love the film already or who are experiencing it for the first time. So
How did you get to know about the film?
so I we programming our screenings has been really interesting because at some point you feel like you're running out of options or you feel like you're specifically because we're focusing on like films that center Black queer characters, and so and that's who our audience is. And so at some point I was like, oh my gosh, we try to do things for holidays or seasons to sort of, and I was like, what if we did like a something around like horror? And then I was like, oh, that's great. And then I was like, Michael, I'm going to go look for some films. And I was like, there are no feature films. So I was like, we got to do a night of shorts. And then I was like, okay, so let me go look for shorts. And then I took me down a rabbit hole of all kinds of things. And I think I was on Letterboxd, which is a really great film sort of database. And people compile lists across different, topic areas. And someone had like, a sort of ongoing running list of all the like Black queer films, horror films, and this was on it, and I was like, must find this film because it really is quite pioneering. I just don't know that I've seen this kind of a story since, and that makes me sad, but we are showing a couple of other shorts, one that was produced last year, about a 10-minute short that's about that features a Black queer man, and then we have another one, but it's the choices were just so limited, and then I was like, I gotta go dig into these to see how we can get it involved and screen it. So
thank you very much.
And I would say for me too, I mean, it's a first watch for me, introduced to it by Josh. So I feel like even as a baby of the 80s, shout out 1986, as a first watch, it was still enjoyable for me, being introduced to it. And it does matter as far as representation and all of those things. So I'm a first time watcher, learned about it through that. So even this many years later, of what it speaks to and what it represents, and that there, to my knowledge, has not been many Black queer characters when it comes to the horror genre, to me is unbelievable, because I feel like it is very, very open wide for the LGBTQIA plus in horror as a fan myself. So yes, it's a pleasure for me.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Glad you enjoyed it, both of you, each of you.